just make sure we're up and running here. Hello and welcome to CC Design. Looks like we're live. Let's just make sure we got our comment window open so I can see all your wonderful comments. All right. Looks like everything is up and running. And hey, Trent, what's going on, man? Glad to see you here, and thanks for letting me know the comments are working. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. This is going to be a stream that I've been wanting to do for a while and finally getting around to it. It's about using two products together. We're going to be using, of course, Photoshop towards the end, and we're going to be using a brand new product that is still kind of in development. It's called Project Felix. So usually when something has the word project in front of it, that means it's a work in progress. And so I see people coming in from all over the world, and I'm going to say hello France, hello Austria, hello Australia, and hello UK, Kep, Hair, and TB Media, and everyone else, Tasha, Jamie, and Victoria, and Laura. Hello and welcome, everyone. So if I missed your name or I don't call your name out later, this is the general hello catch-all for everyone else that's in the room. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to start off in Project Felix, like I said, which is a brand new application. If you are a Creative Cloud member, you can download Project Felix, and no matter which plan you're on, you can download Project Felix and start playing with it, of course, after you watch this tutorial, and you get a feel for what Project Felix can do. So with that said, let's go ahead and switch over to my computer, and that way we can take a look at what I'm going to do. And I see people still popping in from Germany, Kenya, here in Atlanta, as well as Norway. All right, let's pop over to my computer. So I've just got my desktop up. Haven't launched Project Felix yet. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now so you guys can see it. And let's go ahead and fire up Felix. So also when you kind of see this grid paper icon too for the or backdrop for the screen, that usually means it's also still a work in progress. So this is it, Project Felix. You can of course create a new project or open one of your existing ones. I'm going to go ahead and by the way, if you want to watch the intro video for how it works or do a guided tour, you can do that as well in the Project Felix start screen. So let's go ahead and create a brand new project from scratch. And I'll take a second to open up the canvas. And if this looks a little different and scary, different is okay because it is a brand new product, but trust me, it's really not too scary. It does involve 3D, and that's why I didn't put 3D in the title, because people see the word or see the letters or acronym 3D, and they immediately disconnect because they think, oh, 3D, that's not for me. I can't do 3D. That's for people that do 3D, and 3D is hard, and I don't want to learn, I can't learn 3D. This is the easiest 3D you've ever used, so don't even think of it as 3D, even though it is 3D compositing. I didn't put it on the title because I didn't want to scare people away. It's that easy to use. I'm not a 3D artist by any means, but even I can use Project Felix. Okay, so let me give you a quick walkthrough of the interface. On the left-hand side, oh, wrong mouse. On the left-hand side, we've got our tools. You've got your scene, which is the canvas that you're working on. Down at the bottom, you've got your assets or your CC libraries. I'm going to go to my CC library in a moment. But you've got your assets, which includes models, so things that you can bring in for free. You've got lights, ways of lighting your subjects that you can bring in, and materials for applying to your products or subjects that you're going to bring in. All right, so we're going to go back to all, or actually just go to models for what I want. And whenever I see someone do a Felix demo, they almost always use a bottle. And I've done my best to avoid using a bottle because the bottle is like the just most common overused example, because people take a bottle, they put liquid in it, and they put a splash around it, and they wrap a label on it, and that's great. But let's do something a little different. I'm going to do something that I've done before when Felix first came out for the public. I did a quick demo using one of my own photographs for a model, and then I used kind of a product of a paper or a shopping bag. We're going to use the shopping bag example again, but I'm going to use different backgrounds and different wrap around the bag itself. So if you want to grab one of these models, all you have to do is just click on it, and it will load itself onto the canvas. Once it loads onto the canvas, which depending on your computer, the speed and the size of the model might take a few seconds, but once it loads onto the canvas, you get a big giant bag. So I'm going to go ahead and scale this down. I'm going to grab the scale tool, and I'm just going to click on that center triangle there and just start bringing the size of this bag way down. It's a little too big for my taste. Now I could just zoom out. That would be an option as well. The zoom tool is here, so I could zoom out and zoom the whole canvas out. But in this case, I just thought it'd be easier to make the bag a little smaller. Okay, so why do we say this is a 3D tool? Because if you click on your little rotation tool over there on the left, you can actually rotate this in 3D. So I could turn this bag around, flip it around, I could flip it up or sideways or tilt it. I can rotate it on any axis as I would be able to any other 3D object. So this is going to be our product. We want to create a custom bag with our own artwork wrapped around it. Now Photoshop's great for doing compositing of 2D elements. And yes, Photoshop does have 3D capabilities as well. But what Photoshop's really not that great about is taking something that's 2D or even 3D and wrapping something around it to make it look realistic. So that's what we're aiming to do with Felix, and then we're going to incorporate it. We're going to incorporate all the pieces here and then go finish it in Photoshop. So the two do work together. You can do it all in Felix if you want. If you're happy with the results, you can render it out in Felix and be done with it. Or you can render out a layered Photoshop file, go to Photoshop, and continue working on it. Yes, 3D jitters. I know, you start talking 3D, people start tripping out. Okay, so I've got my bag there. Now, if once the bag came into the scene, it became a layer here, and I can just twirl that down, and that will show me all of the bag's properties. So there's really only two sets of properties here. There's one called bag with gift paper square bag, and there's one called bag with gift paper square gauze. So the gauze is the stuff I'm assuming sticking out of the bag. So I'm going to click on the bag itself, and now I've selected the bag. So that means I can go to my materials, and I can say, well, what do I want that bag to be made out of? What do I want it to look like? So for example, I could go to that material, just click on it, and I get, oh, that's actually kind of cool. I never clicked on that one before. That's called metal tile. I can click on bricks, and notice what it's doing. It's putting the brick bag. It's putting the bricks all the way around it. So if I were to turn this around again, we would see bricks everywhere. So that's the thing that's a little harder to do in Photoshop by trying to put something and wrap something around an object. In Photoshop is a lot harder to do with a 2D object than it would be here in 3D. So this one's damaged something. I can't see the whole name, but okay, that's what that one is. We got marble. And we got some wood textures too. Oh, the marble actually looks pretty cool. We got some wood textures. Now, these are just giving me a brief preview render. This is not the final quality of it. That's another thing about 3D is that it typically has to be rendered. Down here in the lower left-hand corner is like a render preview, and you'll see that update, and that kind of gives you a quick look, and that's always running. It's always continuously rendering, and every time you pause, it'll start doing its thing. If you want to zoom that window up, you can zoom that window up, and it will begin the rendering process to show you a bigger view. And the faster your computer, by the way, the better your graphics card, the faster and all of this will be. The more graphics RAM you have, the better all of this will be. But I'm not going to sit here and wait for this because this isn't what I want to do anyway. So I'm going to put the render window back down in the corner and let it do its thing. Okay, so last time I used this bag, the property I used on it, or material I used on it, was like a copper. There it is. So I made like this copper metallic bag, And then I went on from there. Now, of course, depending on which way you tilt it, you notice that it's getting shadows and darker depending on where it is, because there's a default light source for this. So there's a default light source. Apparently this is the brightest part of it right here. It's lighting the bag up that way. But if I turn it, then it starts to go into the shadows away from the light. Don't worry about the light. We're going to handle the lighting later. Don't really worry about the material because, like I said, we're not going to really use these materials. We're going to basically apply our own material, which is a wrap around it. So how do we do that? Well, the minute you click on any material, so it could have been any one of the ones I've clicked on before, you'll notice on the right-hand side in the appearance, while that object's still selected, you have the copper material appearance, which means you can go in and adjust all the things to it. So if you don't want it to be so metallic, you can turn the metallic down and dull it down a little bit if it's too shiny. You can play with the translucence, the density, and all of these things. But one of the best things you can do is you can also add in your own texture. You can map a texture to it. So what I did was I clicked that little graphic icon in the upper right-hand corner there, and that little graphic icon means, hey, you can go out to your hard drive and go get something you want to bring in. So let me show you what I want to bring in. Let's pop over to Photoshop. And in Photoshop, I found this Adobe stock image to kind of represent maybe what a client might want wrapped around that bag. So it's an image that just says random words like brand, business, logo, style, fashion, so forth and so on. So this actually came from Adobe stock. So I added this to my CC library from stock just to show you what it is. I can go ahead and close it now in Photoshop. Let's head back over to Felix. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and import that in. So I'm going to go ahead and once I click the little image icon over there in the right corner, let me show you again. Click the little image icon. That will then bring up the ability for me to click on this folder icon to go choose a file. So that allows me to choose a file that I want to wrap around this bag. So I've saved that out, called it branding, JPEG. So that was the stock photo I just showed you. Once I bring that in, it just automatically wraps it around the whole bag. So no matter which way I turn this, that complete image will be all the way around the bag. Now, the only downside to this is you don't get to position it. You don't get to move it around the bag, unfortunately. Maybe not in this current beta. So you have to do a little planning in your Photoshop file, depending on where you want things to land. So the last time I showed this, I actually had just a small logo that I wanted on the front of the bag, and I had a ton of white space around it because the white space is what's going to wrap around the other side. So it might take you a couple tries in Photoshop to get the image the right size to put things where you want on the object you're going to wrap it around. But that's pretty much it. Just make your image bigger, smaller, more centered, more to the left, more to the right to get it where you want. In this case, it really didn't matter because I didn't want it to wrap around the whole bag like it does now. Okay, so now we've got the bag in place, and the next thing I want, and by the way, notice that the bag, I just noticed that as I was rotating it, the bag is rotating, but the little, what do they call it, the gauze inside is not, because I don't have the entire object selected. So those two objects are working independent of each other as I'm dragging that around. So that's actually pretty cool. So now I've got this the way I want it. The next thing I want to do now is I want to go in, I can go ahead and twirl this back up now because from now on, I'll be selecting the entire bag, and that should rotate the whole thing, and it does. Okay, so now we've got our bag ready. Now it's time to introduce it to the photo. Where's the photo going to come from? The photo is actually a photo in my library. You can either import a photo in, so you could go up to your file menu, and you could say import images background, or you can use your CC libraries. As soon as my CC libraries load here, there we go. And I'm in my Adobe stock library, and there's the background that we use for the bag, the material we use for the bag. This is the actual image I want to import it into. So I'm just going to click on this image, and that will apply it to the background. Now, when it applies it to the background, unfortunately, Felix right now has kind of like this landscape canvas. My image in this case is tall, so a portrait image. So what I need to do is tell Felix to scale my image down to fit the canvas. And it's going to leave that white space on the sides, and I don't care about that. Now, the next thing you'll notice is the bag is sitting on a horizon line. That was the original horizon line for the bag. That horizon line doesn't match the photo. So luckily, Felix is one of the few tools that lets me easily click the horizon tool to either pull the horizon down to match my photo, or even if the horizon's tilted, I can tilt the sides to match the photo. Now that's a really big bag for her to be carrying. So we actually need to make that bag smaller. We're going to do that by going to the scale tool, and we're going to actually click on the bag with the scale tool, and we're just going to go right here in the center and kind of scale that whole thing down a bit, just pulling the center of this control down, scaling it proportionally. I'm not holding down the shift key, it's just doing it automatically. And we'll pull that down just a little bit more, trying to get what I think would be about the right size. And okay, so now I got the right size, I can go ahead and pick the whole thing up and put it near her hand, like she's actually going to be carrying it. Now, don't worry about the strap. The strap should be going in between the fingers. That's what Photoshop's for. We're going to deal with that in a minute. Let's get the bag in the right position first before we worry about the finger part. Okay, so next thing I want to do is I want to take the rotation tool again. We're going to rotate the bag a little bit more that way. Right about there. Now, biggest problem with this whole scene, now that I brought in this background, the background is dark. It's really not on a bright sunny day, or at least the model's not out in the bright sun. The bag looks like it's got a light on it. It looks like it's brightly lit. So this is a dead giveaway that this was not real. This is not the real thing, the real deal. So I could sit here, if I were a 3D artist, and try and mess around with the lighting and try and get the lighting turned down and get the right lighting and all that. But here's the main reason why I love Felix. Because Felix has this feature specifically designed for situations like this that lets me light my object, my product, from the light from the photo. So if I go into the background, which is the background photo right now, you'll notice that, I just clicked on background layer on the left, you'll notice that create light from image is a choice. It's just a button. All I have to do is click create light from image, give it a few seconds to build a light from the image itself, and that light will be used to cast on my 3D object. All right, we'll just give that a second. There. Now we get a more natural looking light for that bag, and it's even using the reflective properties from the scene. So I can see some of the green and blue from her dress, I can see some of the street, the car, and all of that being reflected onto the bag using the lighting from the image. And that's what makes this look a lot more natural and a lot more realistic. That actually looks like it matches the scene versus what she would have been carrying, this brightly lit bag that someone's holding the light on as she's walking down the street. And that, of course, would not be very realistic. So at this point, I can keep working with it. I can go in now and I can go to the light itself now that we have a light. And if I wanted to turn the light up a little bit, I could. So it's making parts of the bag brighter. I could also change the light threshold. Again, make the bag a little bit brighter if I wanted to, maybe something like that. I can also go out and check my render. I can go in now and maybe tilt the bag a little bit more. Let's go back to the bag itself and tilt the bag, maybe get it in the right position where I want it. But you get the idea. That's pretty much it. You composited and created a product that didn't exist into your photo. So now at this point, after you've tweaked it and got it just the way you want it, all you need to do at this point is render it out. So here's what you do. Up here in the upper left corner, you'll notice you got the word design. That's the mode we've been working in before. You just click on render, and that would take you over to the render panel. Once you're in the render panel, at this point, you would then just choose how do you want it to look. You want it fast, low res, so maybe you can proof it first, make sure it looks the way you kind of want it to look before you spend a lot of time rendering a high quality version. So I highly recommend, especially the first couple times you do this, just to make sure you don't waste a lot of time rendering out something that doesn't look right. Do a low and fast. Do a low and fast, make the actual Photoshop file, go check it out in Photoshop, make sure it looks the way you want. Then if everything's looking the way you want, come back and render the highest, slowest version, which depending on what you're doing in the resolution, that could take a few minutes, it could take an hour, depending on what it is you're actually trying to render out. So don't do the highest, slowest one just to look. All right, so rather than make you sit here and watch a progress bar, I've actually gone ahead and rendered one out. I told it to render out a Photoshop file, layered. I saved it out to my hard drive, and now we can go ahead and open that file up in Photoshop so that we can see it. Let me go to my desktop here where I rendered it out. Desktop, and then we'll go to test render final. So now we're opening it up in Photoshop, and here's the one that I rendered out earlier today. So I actually, in that first render, I made the bag a little smaller and not as bright, but here's the version that got rendered out before. So as you can see, it gave me a layer for the bag, it gave me a layer for the image, and it gave me the big canvas that I don't need. And by the way, I can just crop down to that version. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and crop it down to just that. Okay, that's all I need. And now that I've got this layer, let's go ahead and fix the strap to make it look better in her fingers. So we're going to zoom in. This wasn't the highest resolution, by the way. This was a low res to get it quick. And what I'd want to do is I want to make it look more like it's intertwined in her fingers. So what I can do on a rendered image is I can add a layer mask. And then using a black paintbrush, I can just go in and kind of just maybe paint out some of that strap so it looks like it's intertwined in her fingers. Something like that. All right, that looks more like she's carrying it. Maybe undo that last part. There we go. Yeah, we'll leave that part the way it is. Okay. And that would be about it. And now you'd have your rendered file ready to show your client, ready to post on your website, ready to do whatever it is. And of course, now the model we got from Adobe Stock, last time I used one of my own models, this one was from Adobe Stock, is now carrying your product, your bag that you did. How long before Felix comes out of beta? When it's ready? You know, we never give dates. You should know that by now. Okay, it's going to come out July 29th. That's the date that it's actually not going to come out. But it'll come out when it's ready, like most things. Or, you know, maybe around some event. You never know. Okay, so with that said, that's Project Felix. You can go download it from Creative Cloud and install it. Just go to your Creative Cloud, go to your Apps tab. You'll see Project Felix in your apps to install area down there. Just click install and you'll have it, and you're then able to play with it and do what I just did. The models that are there for you to use for free. If you want to go to Adobe Stock, you can actually search Adobe Stock for additional 3D models that you might want to use, but those you'd have to pay for. And that's it. So thank you for your time. Let me see if I missed any questions over there in the chat. Let's see here. I see you, Renee. How are you? And thank you. I think it is nice. All right. Okay. I think I got all those questions, and I got all the ones over here. So that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching this, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks, everybody, and cheers. Take care.